Hello, Playthings! Happy Pride Month! My name is Jason Brubaker. I am the Artistic Director of the Playthings Theater of New York. Playthings is a family of storytellers who offer a voice to the LGBTQ+ community by producing classic and contemporary plays and musicals. Welcome to our EqualiTEA Symposium. We have many interesting and intriguing aspects happening within this symposium. We are spotlighting 3 allied companies, we have 3 musical numbers, and we have 3 amazing panelists to have a virtual sit down to discuss intersectionality and equity in theater. It is my honor to introduce these wonderful storytellers, activists, and fabulous human beings, Roger Q. Mason, Clara Martinez, and Kiernan Westrick. Let me start by saying hello to each and every one of you and thank you for joining Plaything and being a part of this EqualiTEA Symposium. Panelists, I'm going to hand it over to you to kind of introduce yourselves. Would you give us your names, your pronouns, and anything you would like our patrons to know about yourself? I'm going to start in alphabetical order with Roger.
I knew you were going to start with me. Well, how are you all? My name is Roger Q. Mason, and Jason, it's wonderful to be speaking with your wonderful patronage again. I had the pleasure of doing so last year, and I am excited for this conversation as well this year. Hi, Daniel. How you doing, Pooh? I go by they, them pronouns, and one thing I want people to know about myself right now, it's more what you can't know yet. I have a show that's going up. It's a regional theater. It's my regional theater debut, and it'll be going up on a digital platform next month. So I can't say too much more, but it's a Los Angeles regional theater, and the play is called The Duot. So look out for that because it opens July 8th, and check out my socials for more info as it arrives.
That's great. Carla?
Hey everyone, my name is Carla Martinez, Dina Cola. My pronouns are she, hers, and I am an Afro-Latina queer performer, choreographer, and educator, and I live here in New York City.
And Kiernan.
Hi there, I'm Kiernan. My pronouns are he, him. I just graduated Fordham University with a degree in playwriting and women, gender, sexuality studies. So I'm just entering the field in this artistic space, and I'm super excited. I'm like everyone, I've got big dreams of making the world a better place through theater. So there we are.
Thank you all so much again for joining this. I'm going to move on and just say for our patrons at home to know, I will be here to state any of the topics, read the statements of our allied companies, and introduce the performances that are going to be going on. But this time in this space is for our panelists. So I'm going to start us off by bringing up the topic of intersectionality in the LGBTQ+ community. I'm going to go sit in the back.
Oh, Lord. They got us working. I mean, what do we say?
There's so much to say.
I know. I mean, to be a member of this brilliant and resplendent community, the LGBTQIA+ world is in and of itself an intersectionality. Because we are already, I think, fusing different identities and disrupting so many social and political structures just through the nature of our being. And it's a damn shame, honestly, that we still have to use the moniker of identity politics as a rally cry. But as we're seeing in terms of legislation around the country, anti-trans legislation, particularly in the faith belt, which is what I'll call it, we're under attack. And certain states are trying to dehumanize what it means to announce yourself as trans. not just to be trans, but to announce it, you see, because we have a very interesting history of wanting things to be nice and polite and swept under the rug. You know, and it's fine until I see it. So visibility politics, I think, is an important weapon of change.
Yeah, I think too, you know, as we are starting to move forward with work that feels remotely more inclusive, I still think that we're lacking visibility across the board. Like I feel, you know, like while we want to believe that it's okay to be under the umbrella of being queer, if we only have shows like The Inheritance, which highlights like the cis gay male kind of world, I don't know if that's moving us in the direction of acceptance. It just feels like here's another play, you know, talking about, you know, how hard it is being queer from one tiny lens, you know. It's not celebrating in our joy that we feel as queer people. It's just kind of, you know, just highlighting another hit. It doesn't feel like people are making work highlighting the joy. It feels like people are capitalizing on the pain of the queer experience.
And not from a place of transformative difference. Because we also can't do a minstrel show for the public and be happy, joy all the time either.
Right.
The difference, I think, is creating a work that balances joy and pain. That would make us human, you know. But we haven't quite gotten to that place yet because in the zeitgeist, we're not seen as human.
Right.
So therefore, we're in this polarized situation where we either have to choose one or the other.
Yeah, in the same way that, you know, like how we're creating work that it doesn't feel like as a person of color that I can exist in the space on the same level as a white person without that being highlighted, right? Like that's the thing. It's like people want to highlight the queerness as opposed to just kind of seeing us for who we are, which feels really weird. Like it feels really weird that, you know, also
exoticized.
Yeah, like it also feels really, really hard too, like knowing that kind of people pay to see the world from this experience, but like take them out of the theater. Like these are not the same people that are like rooting for us to succeed. Like these are the people that, you know, had on the red hats and were saying like, you don't exist. Like you are not special. There is nothing special about you. I don't know like why you need like a certain month to, you know, highlight who you are. Like those are the same people. And it's hard to separate that. And that's how I feel when I go into these spaces where I think that it's okay for us to kind of just exist and be, you know?
I want to turn this over to Kieran.
Yeah. I was thinking of something you just said, Carla, of, I mean, that's the big crux of intersectionality is, you know, I'm allowed to be an Asian person. I'm allowed to be a trans person, a queer person, whatever. Like one at a time, in a way. So it's hard for people to see me and just people with intersectional identities in general as a whole human being, as opposed to an identity label. And if it is an identity label, like I said, it can only be one at a time because that's as much as people are willing to sort of sift through and deal with the difficulties of. So, I mean, I've seen a few shows and that have like really inspired me and and been able to capture that intersectionality within queer people of color identities. But not a lot, like you said, like it's a lot of inheritances where it's just kind of one aspect of queerness being inspected at one time. And, I think being like a person of color really ties into queerness so nicely. And so it can't be ignored to me.
Well, here's what's interesting is, Carla, you said, well, I don't understand why you need a certain month. And basically what you're talking about is the same philosophy behind anti-affirmative action.
Mm.
There's an ahistorical ignorance. There is a desire to say, things are different now. Stop complaining. We're all the same. You don't need these things. But in doing so, you actually erase that person's experience. You do not hold the key to how I relate to my trauma. You don't get to tell me when I can stop hurting from 100 years, 400 years, 1,000 years, 2,000 years of you pummeling me with hate. I get to decide. And that kind of psycho-civic colonialism, is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Dominant culture is still trying to be a bug in your ear and control your mind by denying your presence. You don't get a special month because I write the calendar. Well, guess what, motherfucker? We don't count time that way. We don't use your calendar, and we don't need your calendar because we on our own time. That's what the work is. That's the work.
Right.
Making our own relationship to time and psychic space. Because trying to assimilate is not going to help you.
Right.
Now you can take it over though. but then we would be the same colonizers.
Right.
Now we'd be colonizing too. Now isn't that interesting? How a proposed attractive solution to the problem is actually creating a new colony. So how do we do away with that structure? What in the world? Somebody's asking, how do we work around or fix the issues of colonialism in our present time? Go ahead, Jeff.
He did that.
Jeff did that. Wait a minute. Who's going to take that one? Kiernan, you better do something.
Sure. Yeah. Let me think of some solutions right now.
Go through playwriting degree.
I mean, I think there are some like central tenets of colonialism and white supremacy that we can like just look at and name, like things like toxic productivity, or things like tokenism that are like were created by colonialism and by white supremacy as these like ethereal things that we can't really touch, but that we know are part of the power structure. And so just by identifying those and keeping them out of our spaces and inventing new ways to exist outside of those frameworks is what has been the most healing to me personally, like on a one-on-one basis, or a work basis, or like a psychological basis, like not holding myself to those kinds of standards. As far as like letting those things permeate into the wider culture, it's so hard because it does feel like at a certain point it's got to be kind of a grassroots push.
Absolutely.
I think really what's powerful, Kieran, about what you're saying is you're decolonizing your mind. You're saying, I'm going to define my success. I'm going to structure my day. I'm going to account for my successes and my shortcomings in an individuated way.
Mhm.
as opposed to something that ascribes to a much larger system that does not really necessarily represent my best values.
Mhm.
Because I think the way that colonialism works is it makes the individual feel that their native way is inferior.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
think
Mhm.
about the Indian school system of the 1800s into 1970s in this country, taking children. And what did they say? You have to kill the Indian to save the man.
Mhm. It's really a mentality of like you assimilate into this dominant culture, or you perish, you die. Basically,
Mhm.
you're not a human, or we're gonna make your life as hard as possible so that you cannot live. And so just to break out of that and to refuse to think in that way for yourself, because you can't have, like, I don't know, like, there's not a singular person that's telling me, oh, you have to act this way, you have to act this way. You can't assign a white supremacist to every marginalized person in order to do that. It is messages we're told in our mind, and things that I stop myself from doing. So just by refusing to think that way, and refusing to behave in assimilative ways that I don't feel fit me, that's big, I think.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it also too, it makes me think about the ways in which we kind of carry on like business as usual. Because so I'm a delegate of Actors Equity, which means that I have just the slightest bit more power than like the regular member, but like not enough power to like actually like be the one to like say, all right, we're going to implement this. But what has been fascinating, as I've been in this position is, kind of we work in the theater, and theater is such, this rainbow of a place to be. But if you really think about it, it's very binary thinking, all from the top, from the bottom up. We have binary auditions where it's the women's call and the men's call. When you go and audition for a character, the breakdown of the character is like, Carla, like female, X, Y, and Z, and we've been kind of programmed to think like, look, this is just how it works. Like I'll show up in the way that I show up, and I'll kind of figure it out. But like that's where that stops. Like that's where the grassroots, the people who are not in power, that are older, out of touch, like have been in government for 30 plus years or whatever, like those people are not the ones that are going to implement change, because they don't know what that looks like. So it's the people over here in these grassroots programs that are like, we need to eliminate the men versus the women call. We need to find a way to make the language more inclusive in breakdowns, and that's the part where I feel like we're just missing. We haven't figured out how to like.
Well, that's because let me say this to you, and I've always thought about this. That's because as a culture, we possess a 5th grade sexual education at best. Now think about yes, I'm getting controversial, honey. It's Pride
Yes,
Month.
I agree though. I agree with you. 100%. I'm rolling my eyes at all the people who try to like explain chromosomes to me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, where did you get this?
This is the issue. Okay. When do you have sex ed class? About 5th grade, 6th grade.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Now, that's the first and the last time that you formally discuss your sexuality and your gender expression in an educational setting. And so basically, everything that you learn after that is learned experientially and is influenced by, okay, Daniel's gonna come. We
I'll
gonna
let
get
you
you
know.
we gonna get you boo-boo. Educationally, everything that you learn from that point on is experiential, and it's tainted by the biases of the dominant culture in which you live, which is a cisgender, a binary, male-dominated society. That has an effect on every single aspect of how you develop your selfhood. Now, when you exist as a person outside of that limited spectrum of definition, but there is no language and nobody is prepped educationally on how to address you, you are at a disadvantage because it's you against an entire society. Now, let's say you're a playwright coming up in the world, because the breakdowns are written first by the playwrights. But how many playwrights, and don't forget Daniel's question, how many playwrights are taught to write for a non-binary world?
Right.
Then when you get to the casting office, how many casting directors are trained in how to cast for a non-binary world? None. None. So, and then when you ask people, let's say you have somebody that was transgender, was assigned male at birth and female presenting, and then the inarticulate nature with which people start talking when they get short-circuited and don't know how to identify you all of a sudden glimpse into their eyes, and what you see is an 11-year-old. And the way that, but your face is, but you sound like, and it's very inarticulate because they have not trained their mind past 11. That growth was stunted. So we have a very poor sexual and gender education system in this country. So what we really need to do, and because gender and sexuality are so politicized, depending on who's in office at the time, you either have one version of the truth or the other. But you never get all of them. So I really blame the education, the civic education. We need to really re-educate our society. But you have to change the Mayflower. They were so damn conservative on that thing. They even left England. Huh? They said, "Oh, you can have equality. Huh? You can't have no tea over here. You can take your ass over there. Go have your tea over there, because you doing too much. I can't get divorced. I don't like that woman. I just need her husband money." Shit, you ain't gonna tell me who not divorced. You ain't gonna get in my pocketbook. You see, conservatism only works so far. Once you start getting into somebody's pocketbook, then they start changing their political.
Then you got him. Yep.
Ooh, let me shut up. Okay, Kiernan, you had a question.
Okay, well, the 2-minute warning. So let me try to do this in 2 minutes.
Warning. Where'd you get that?
Oh, over yonder in the chat there. It's okay. But I mean, I was lucky to pick up my secondary degree in women, gender, sexuality studies. That's where the bulk of where we talked about intersectionality. And if I hadn't taken those classes, it pretty much wouldn't have been taught to me in the undergraduate level. Within our theater department at Fordham, there's recently been a lot of reform, due in part, not in part, I'm gonna give myself credit, due in full to like the BIPOC students who have we've rallied, we've organized, and we've pushed for these kinds of reforms. Just in my time at Fordham, I've seen them change the housing policies from being like you're assigned sex at birth to being self-ID, which is amazing. But it's like now it's like 2021. That's the first time we got self-ID dorms. I mean, it's frustrating and optimistic at the same time. So it's like a really complicated mix of feelings for me, like my education on intersectional topics. Very, very conflicting feelings.
So we had a 2-minute warning, and that means I guess we're out, because here comes Jason.
Not out just yet. If you guys wanna say anything else, that's perfectly fine. But like, I want to start by saying thank you so much for your voices. We are going to continue this now, unless anybody has anything else to close with, which is perfectly fine. I mean, the floor is completely, this is your platform. If we come to another topic, you just want to be like, no, let's go back to this topic, go back to it. I'm perfectly fine with that.
Oh, I see. We're doing different. Got you.
So what I will say right now is that I'm also just super intrigued by this conversation, because when filing for a 501c3 for a not-for-profit for theater, you file under education. So I mean, this is the crust of like really amazing stuff.
Hey, James. I'll see you tomorrow, honey. I gotta think tomorrow there. I gotta rep it.
So if we can start to shift, I'd like to say that it's important for Playthings to support and sponsor some of our allied companies. And we're going to bring up a clip right now of a spotlight of the LGBT Center in New York, located on West 13th Street. And we'll bring that up right now.
This is a place that is meant to be really stable and secure and warm and welcoming and available. We really seek to provide the space for people to come and get what they need.
When I moved to New York City, I was in a relationship with my ex. He and his friends were my social circle, but then the relationship ended. I was completely alone.
I didn't thought I would have to come here, escaping, asking for asylum.
The space, the autonomy to be able to express myself in terms of sexuality, gender, and New York had always seemed like a place where I could do that.
People who will just like love you and accept you with open arms is just so important, especially with the society we live in.
We've seen a rise in hate crimes just across the country. We've seen very disturbing rhetoric.
There is an epidemic going on right now for trans women of color, specifically Black trans women who are being murdered.
I did 18 years in prison, started to reconcile my sexual identity, how to deal with that, get past the denial part of it.
I started drinking initially because I had just realized I was trans, and I had a therapist who was actually practicing conversion therapy. So I thought I was going to die. I didn't think I was going to make it to 18.
To me, it's always important to be mindful of like identity and who is being centered, who's at the forefront of the conversation. People are looking for us to have that voice. People are looking at the center to lead that fight. Hi, Trevon. Nice to meet you. So Rise Out is the name of our advocacy initiative. Our approach to advocacy is really just making sure that we are activating community.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
It's really about making sure that those in power see this as a priority.
Whatever happens in New York will actually set the tone for the rest of the country, and it is our hope that we can have a domino effect.
When we take a step forward, it's not usually all of us. There are people that are left behind, so we have to think of them and really put them at the center.
I have a stake in this community, I have a say.
We still have to stick together as a community until we achieve that for everybody.
If we don't fight for it, nobody's going to fight for it for us.
I'm so happy when I can see someone expressing love. So I have hope, and also with the center to overcome that challenging moment in my life.
I'm super hopeful for our community. I think that there is more equity, like a lot more than there was in the past, but I think that we have so much more work to do.
Ultimately, like the world that I want to see is a world that celebrates people for who they are.
There's this wonderful life and energy that comes with a space where people can be free and people can also be safe, and those two things can coexist.
And now we're going to have one musical number written by Bobby Cronin and sung by Claire O'Malley. This is Something is Beginning.
I think she looked at me. I think she smiled at me. I think that that something is happening. Something is beginning. Something is beginning. I am sure I don't know what to do. Even more, I'm afraid I could fall for you. Maybe it's time to learn to let go. And maybe through happenstance I found my second chance. So don't be afraid, and don't say too much, and don't doubt or go too fast. Just let this moment last. Second chance. Ooh. Second chance.
Thank you, Claire and Bobby, for that lovely song that was beautifully performed. I'm going to leave it up to all of you again and just say our next topic for our panelists is, what shows or voices would you like to hear or see more of?
Oh, for me, definitely more trans stories. I mean, it's as we've been discussing. There's and also like more stories about women women loving women. That's also a huge gap. I think when we're talking about like the letters of the LGBT, like pretty much everything. Pretty much the G has been really dominant, right? So pretty much everything else, including the plus, has been completely ignored. So that's something I'm really interested in seeing.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I can only see like Fun Home so many times before I'm like, okay, like we just need like an updated piece that like really focuses on the relationship like between like two women. Like that's something that I don't feel like there's enough of. And of course, always more trans stories, because the visibility for trans folks is just non-existent. Especially in the theater world, where I feel like there's no reason why we shouldn't be writing more stories, you know? Like this is the place where we have like the agency and the freedom to do so. So yeah.
And the reality is we are writing the stories. We exist. I am the lead mentor of the New Visions Fellowship, which is created by the National Queer Theater in partnership with the Dramatists Guild. And we saw 43 applications of self-identifying Black, trans, and GNC playwrights. And I had the honor of interviewing about 15 of them as finalists. And the ideas and the dreams that they possess for our theatrical landscape are otherworldly. Because these people have had to create other worlds because this one doesn't recognize them. So they've contrived entire intellectual ideas about what theater can do. And watching them is simply magical. So they exist. It's just a matter of who's going to program them.
Right. How do we fund them? Like, we need the coin to do that. Where are the producers that fall under the umbrella, and not just like the white cis gay man, because they're clearly only producing the stuff that we see now, which is not inclusive, you know? But like, how do we build, you know, pathways for not only us to produce this work, but to have people in our community produce the work, you know?
Right. And I think it's a matter of figuring out how to partner with government and how to partner with individuals that are dedicated to supporting and sustaining a relationship to queer and trans stories.
There's like a dual thing where I think people that are outside of the queer community, or aren't BIPOC themselves, feel both like afraid of the stories and also devaluing stories that are told by BIPOC queer people, right? Like it's both like, oh, I don't want to go there, but also like, I don't really want to go there, which is bad. And it's like you said, like what you said, Roger, really resonates with me, because that's the gift of intersectionality, is when you mix two identities or three identities or more, you're not drawing away, you're not spreading yourself thin. What actually happens is you make like something even more beautiful that you could have imagined if it was one thing. So it's about, like, people need to value that, I think.
And therein lies the curse of intersectionality, because it is dissected and devalued as too complicated and risky.
Right. That part.
And because of that, people are not equipped financially to invest in something that makes them unseat the neatness of their social structure. You know, so the problem is, I mean, look, and James is in here, and James is working with Fuse to do a reading of my play, The White Dress, which is the 5th anniversary of the play. And yes, we're going to say that she turned 5, because 5 years ago, and really I started writing that play 7 years ago, it was a genderqueer coming of age story that was structured like the Stations of the Cross. If you're looking for a structure, just go to what they know. The Bible.
Yeah.
You know, I can't tell you how much hell I went through in those early years of that play trying to get it programmed, because it did not lower itself to the place of cultural ambassadorship, where it was explaining and having weigh-in characters to bridge the gap between what I knew as my life and what was comfortable for ladies and gentlemen of the parlor. Look at slave narratives. What was the point of the slave narrative? To humanize the Black mind. Let me speak as you do, dress as you do, write as you do, in order to prove to you that I'm human. Sojourner Truth, ain't I a woman? There's another version of this same idea. Well, we never left that pulpit where we're having to perform a superhumanity. We never left that place, because we are still not seen as fully normalized human. But I think that's okay. I actually think we're divine. I don't want to be on the ground with them. If we can tap into the sublime majesty of what it means to be intersectional, we will truly tap into the alchemic splendor of the universe. We don't have to be on the ground with them. We don't have to acquiesce to them. We don't have to define and defend ourselves as human. You don't want me to be human? That's fine, honey. They told me I was a fairy anyway. Let me redefine that term and make it mine. So there's something really, especially the playwright, What we've lost in this predator capitalist society is the divinity of the playwright. The playwright gathers the people and writes the story that makes the sun rise and the moon shine and the crops grow and the water to fall again. If not for those stories and how they reorder the spiritual mechanism of community, the world wouldn't go.
Mm-hmm.
And we've forgotten that.
Mm-hmm.
We've forgotten that. Why? Because you can't sell enough tickets off that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But yet there's a higher purpose to what we do. There's a spiritual purpose. The ancients understood that. I'm going to go ahead and get some feta cheese and say the Greeks understood it.
Yeah.
And the Egyptians understood it before them. And the Native Americans understood it with their rituals of rain.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody understood that the writer who contrives the occasion for community purging and dreaming is at the center of society.
Mm-hmm.
And that their value is beyond money. Why can we not understand that now?
Mm-hmm.
Look at countries in Europe that fund artists as part of this the civic underpinnings. Have we no pride?
Mm-hmm.
This is America. These are the people that speak our story. These are the ambassadors of the best that we purport to represent. Why wouldn't you make their lives sustainable?
Mm-hmm.
So that they can continue to thrive and dream? Because you don't value them. You want to keep people working a 9-to-5 with a credit card debt and paying rent for the rest of the
Right, that part, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You don't give a damn about people. You ain't a people-based society. You're a product-based society. So come on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you ain't no robot that I don't have to pay insurance to, I don't have time for your ass. You want 40 hours, I'm going to give you 38. Just so that with them 2 hours difference, I don't have to pay you time and a half and I don't have to put you on benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
How can I get it done faster, cheaper, and more depersonalized?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this directly affects the relationship to transness, because now you have a body, a divine body, which is going to actually make you work, which needs and questions and redefines and reimagines what it means to be human. Because now you can't say, well, here's the cup, go pee in the cup. You go to the doctor's office and they talk down to you like you're some 2-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And that's easy. Why? Because they ain't being paid enough to care either.
Mm-hmm.
That body requires more effort, more intellect.
Mm-hmm.
That's why that body is so beautiful. That body and that mind are beyond the confines of this world, because that mind have traced the limitations of this world. That trans body, that marvelous trans body. But people don't want to work.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
Lord, I hope Jason's recording this, because we have to hold the show down again.
Right? No, it's so true what you're saying, that like there's this parallel with transness and this because I think theater is political and is transgressive, and that's why it's not valued by our government, because that's not what they want. They don't want transgression. They don't want protests. They don't want anything that's going to start to deconstruct the system of power that we already have in place. So where is the most money in entertainment? It's in the same 5 Hollywood movies over and over. It's not in the indie films. It's not in the theaters. It's not in the artists. Yeah.
The structure that is.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. you don't get the
people,
transgressive
love
neighbor.
wins, all of these things.
Yeah, there's no
Love doesn't
complexity
win.
in that.
What if somebody went home hungry that night? That's what I'm saying about balancing joy and pain. We don't always win. I'd like to see us win once because it gives me hope. But I also want to know that tomorrow I may lose everything and I still have to have hope. That's a human story. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's revolutionary.
Right.
I mean, to use like a really old adage, right? Oh gosh, now playwriting degree come through, but you know, that a comedy is a tragedy that got cut short, or vice versa, right? And seeing things in that very binary way, I mean, that's one thing, but to have the balance, that's important.
Jason, are you recording this? I hope so, baby.
Oh, you're on mute.
You're on mute, honey. You're on mute.
Sorry, I got sent in early. Yes, of course we are, baby.
Good. So you have this. You need this.
Now I'm about to make a bunch of t-shirts and give you all proceeds from it. If it's all right, can we move on to the next Spotlight Foundation, which is the Stonewall Community Foundation?
Fabulous.
Right. If no one's gotten bored by my voice yet, you're going to. Their Vision Awards will be broadcasting this Thursday. Here's the information to the event. The Stonewall Community Foundation Vision Awards honors extraordinary individuals that use their vision and voice to make the world a better place for the LGBTQ community. Vision 2021 invites viewers from across the globe to center and celebrate their mission of moving our people closer to liberation. With a diverse lineup of LGBTQ and ally voices, Vision is polished and unpretentious event that breaks the mold with its spontaneous and sincerity. This year's honorees include Oscar-nominated actor and singer Andra Day, actor and social justice activist Coleman Migo, Emmy-winning actor and writer Den Levy, activist and executive director of the Transgender League Defense and Education Fund Andy Murrah, and Instagram influencer Plant Queen. The event will be live this Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, and the information is right on the bar below. We are now going to switch over to our next song, which is written by Ryan Amador and choreographed by Alexandra Wales. This is Balloon.
You circle high. You're under roof. I watch you fly. And as if in a my heart flows free. My heart flows free. With body bound in gravity. This weightless love breaks free. So as if in a balloon, my heart all I got. Pop it when you want. Untie the bottom knot. Just don't let it drop and hold it to your chest. Let it be a chance. And far beyond our heads, let's propel each other out.
All right, great. Thank you, Ryan and Alexandria. I think I said Alexandra earlier, so I apologize for that lovely addition. Our third and final topic for our panelists are, what do you expect to see with the return to live in-person theater? Let's go.
You gonna do this right now, really?
Fair game, come on, it's your platform. You do whatever you want.
I'll say this, I will know more once I've gone to a show. So I'm in Los Angeles right now, and the Hollywood Bowl is reopening for the summer, and I'm really curious what that's going to be like. And also Octoroon is a show by Brandon Jacobs Jenkins that's going up in October in an outdoor theater. So I'll be curious to see how that's navigated. You know, are people wearing masks? What is the spacing? In terms of New York, I know that the Crane Theater had some shows a couple of months ago, actually, that were in person. And now a lot of companies are moving towards in-person live experiences again. I think people are hungry to be together. I think it's a matter of us seeing what's really worth their time. And if people are going to take the risk, literally, of leaving their homes and being in space together, because we're not out of this thing yet. You know, what can we give them that they can go home with and say, I'm so glad I left my house? And I don't think it's a production of Cats.
Or The Music Man. I said it. You know, when I think about this, is like something that I think about on a daily basis, only because I have the little information that I do from AA, which is weird because you would think that I would have a little bit more. I think before we even get to the point of being in person live, there's a whole like dictionary, like thesaurus, like big book of things that need to happen before we get to the destination. And I think one of the big things is, what are the theaters going to do to protect us in ways beyond COVID? Because like, they can put all the plans in place. You can get a new filter for your HVAC systems. You could do, you know, you can have a fully vaccinated cast, et cetera, et cetera. But like, what are you going to do when we receive a microaggression because we're queer, because we're Black, because we're this, because we're neurodivergent, because we have a disability? Like, what are the plans in place to keep us safe so that we feel comfortable going and, you know, making you a lot of money is essentially where my brain is right now. And there's not an answer to that, unfortunately.
Right, because we know that the real virus is racism.
Hello, that's the real virus. And the crazy thing is I think I've always believed growing up that Actors Equity would wave their magic wand and just make every company just abide by every, you know, DEI rule book, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes down to it, like they can't, because companies can get away with not hiring authentic talent and say that it's an artistic choice. And then you've got the union saying, well, here are the numbers. Where are the brown people? Where are the queer people, et cetera, et cetera. And they can say, well, it was an artistic choice, or we couldn't find anybody. So that it's not propelling us forward. It's keeping us stuck in things of the past.
But here's the real problem. The real problem, Carla, is even deeper than that. We cannot change people's minds. We can only regulate the outward expression of their behavior. But the reality of the situation is casting that goes awry like that is indicative of a value system that centers certain bodies over others, so that there's a blinder on that person's face that all they see is this, and they can't find nothing else because they're living here.
Right.
So now what you have to do is really fight an impossible uphill battle of getting them to question their value system. And good luck to you on that. Because everyone, my experience has been, people want to do what's comfortable and easy for them and feels familiar to them. They don't want to do discomfort.
Right.
Not everybody relishes the educational invitation of discomfort. So they're going to go for the easy choice.
Right.
That's the real problem.
Yeah, it's the same way why you have, like, you know, people who have been abusive in the workplace, why they still stay on contracts, because they're either a name and they're bringing in the money, or the company doesn't want to do the work in finding somebody else because they don't have the time or the resources or the money. And then the gag is that now that COVID has passed, companies are legitimately trying to ask the union to not pay us what we deserve and use the pandemic as the excuse. And it's like, honey, you weren't paying me what I deserved before the pandemic, and now you're trying to pay me less? Nope, not today. So before we get to the live in-person aspect, which is like very soon, according to all of the companies that have announced that they're coming back, I want to know who I can go to that's not like the general manager that like is some old guy like in his like 50s who doesn't even know my name. You know, I want to know who I can go to. I want to know what resources they have available. I want to know how I'm protected. I want to know that, like, you know, yeah, I'm not going to catch COVID in your workplace, but like, you know, am I going to have like somebody questioning me about like, you know, down to small, minute things like my hair, or, you know, just like all of these things that no one really thinks about. Those are the things that I want addressed before I can walk back into.
They don't think about it because you're not in their reality.
Right.
They go home at night to a completely different world, an insular and comfortable world. They don't live in an integrated society.
Right.
They perform integration during the day because they have to keep their check. But that's not who they go home to at night. Go ahead, Kieran, take it away. Honey.
The bar is so low too. Like one, like the term, like quotas is the big term, right? Like it's like you get like one person of color, one queer person in the cast, and then boom, like your diversity problem solved, or you get one of those people behind the scenes and then it's solved.
I have a comment about that.
Not at all.
Right.
You can go for it. That's what I have to say about that. It's ridiculous.
Here's the thing.
Ridiculous.
Your diversity should not be seen as a problem or a hurdle to overcome.
Right.
Diversity is the reality of the world. We live in a global society.
Thanks, Jeff. Thank you.
Jeff is loving on you. We've been loving Jeff this whole time too.
Yes, we love Jeff. And you know something too, like, and I preach this, and there are people who have gotten like friends of mine, colleagues of mine who have gotten upset when I've been like, but it's also up to the white people. Like, don't show up to an audition for Hamilton as a white person and say, well, diversity is in. Like, I mean, why can't I be here? Same thing as like, don't show up to an audition for a role that is specific to, trans, GNC, like queer, because they cannot ask you in the audition room, do you identify as blank? So if you're hungry for the job, which everyone is, because we haven't worked in 18 months, like you don't need to step aside, and create a space where we can even step into the room, because we're not even there yet,
But that's also going back to this question of the affirmative action erasure and the ahistorical relationship to racism. Is that, and I've spoken to quite a few cisgender male white folks who've said, I grew up in, I was born in the late 70s, grew up in, I lived in a world where, you worked hard, you did a good job, and you'd get what you deserved in the world. And that was just how it works. But it's like, but what they don't explain is that there are certain hidden biases that make that journey possible.
Right.
And can the Black body follow the exact same formula of navigating the world and attain the same result? I don't know.
Right.
I don't believe so. Because the structures of power that govern how those bodies move. I mean, look at this. I was watching this frightening documentary on AI and statistics and how an inherent bias within robots on PBS. This was frightening. How robots are just a reflection of our own biases because they gather information and train themselves based on patterns, and programs that determine what kind of credit you get, programs that determine who will get a promotion at a job, that are all decided autogenically, through these robots that reflect the biases of the world in which they were created. If that's not evidence enough of implicit bias, I don't know what is.
Right.
We can't even say no more. We can't even say a damn thing we can say at this point. So it's one thing. Go ahead, Kiernan. Go ahead.
I was just thinking, oh, wait, did I have it? Do I have it? What was I thinking?
I lost
it. It's okay. It's okay.
I got mine. I got
Go
mine.
for it. I'll think of it.
It's one thing to say, step aside. But that's still not really the solution.
Right.
The solution is think about what it is that you have been given just by being. Think really honestly about the social structure in which you live. And then do something for somebody else. Don't just step aside. Oh, I stepped aside. Oh, I put all Black on my screen. I put the hashtag Black Lives Matter. I bought the t-shirt. I went and got some oxtails. I'm good, right? I'm not racist, right? I posted that picture. I retweeted. No, it's not the external behaviors that we're talking about. And I'm not talking about flogging either, because if I see some more, flogging, self-flogging from that doesn't help, because that's not generative of new social action.
Right.
That doesn't change anything. That's just a performance for you to feel good. Now tomorrow you're gonna get up the next day, you're gonna say some, some more shit. Because you'll perform this person tonight, and then it's just like Broadway. You'll have one night tribute to August Wilson. Tomorrow you can't help yourself. You're gonna do Cats tomorrow.
It's just so tempting.
Not Cats, Lord. No.
Wait, you couldn't wait to get that diversity night over with. So you go back. You
checked it off the list. You did it. It's over. It's a wrap.
But that's the difference between regulating behavior versus intrinsically transforming society.
Right.
That's the difference between those two things. One is superficial and not meant, and the other one is a change in earnest.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we're ever going to get the latter.
Right.
I don't know. That's called Afro-pessimism. There's a whole book written about that. We're not going to do. We're not going to do. We want joy. We want queer joy. It's Pride Month. We want to be happy. But see, that's the problem with just monolithic joy. That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
There's a journey.
Yeah.
I was on a call, what was it, an hour or so ago with a playwright who was talking about someone giving him a note, and the note was, I just don't see enough queer joy. And this person said, but in order to attain joy, I had to go through this pain.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't wait till Act 2 to get to joy. But see, that's the beauty of Dante, the trilogy. He's telling you right there, I have to go through the inferno in order to earn paradise. So I think people are civically impatient too.
Mm-hmm.
We have to also teach our own. Oh Lord, I'm gonna be controversial today. Lord, I'm a LGBTQIA plus community. I still love you all, even if you're gonna hate me after this. It's all right. We have to teach our own how to embrace our own complexity. Because I think we're taught to hate it so much.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and to hide it.
Yeah.
And so the counterbalance is just joy, 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 happy, happy, joy, joy. And there's power in that. There's power in that.
Mm-hmm.
There's healing in that. I'm not disacknowledging that, but I'm really saying balance. Can we live in a body and a mind and a spirit that'll let us have all of it? And maybe we do need to do this joy right now, because that's the medicine we need right now. But baby, you still gonna have to do that aura cleansing from when you was 12. You still gonna have to do it. You still gonna have to go back to the pain. We still got to look at it. Then you really achieve joy.
Impatience is like that's so relevant, I think, right now, because with going back to in-person theater, you know, we've spent a whole year, 18 months talking about, it's okay. It reminded me of it. But we've spent a whole year, over a year in conversations. And when I'm just thinking about like the discourse and the mindsets and the language that's evolved over the past year, it's really significant, just like the way we've been talking about the world and about what we want to see out of the world. But like, if it's all talk and if it's not internalized in us and it's not put into action in the policies that we're just like, oh, we had our conversations and now, you know, I think maybe a little bit differently about this thing now, what we return to is going to look exactly the same as what we left, right? Because the structures are still going to be in place. The intrinsic bias is still going to be in place. And we're so itching to do it. Yeah. But the impatience might be what completely sweeps all the conversations we've been having under the rug.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I get it. Like, people, we need health insurance. We need to get paid. We need, you know, we got to pay rent. We got to do this. All of these things are true. But at the same time, it's like, are you willing to throw away the past 18 months just to go do a production of The Music Man? Like, you know what I mean? Like, are you really hurting that you need to go do that? Or a production of Cats? Like, I'm nervous. I'm really nervous because I feel like now there's an attitude that, well, you know, this company put up a black square and they changed their logo and put up a rainbow flag, and they're allies, you know, they're with us, they understand. but where is the work? Like, you know, I want to know more. Like, have you done that, you know, anti-bias training that you said that was mandatory for all of your staff? Like, have you done that? You know, have you hired like a DEI person so that like if I'm, you know, if somebody like questions me about something, like I can go to this person as opposed to like going to like a company manager who's like just like, you know, like one of us. Like I have so many questions before I am personally ready to get to this point, but I'm worried that that impatience is just going to make everybody forget, and we're just going to go back to like business as usual, which I'm not interested in.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, what was your Corona journey? What did you learn in this
Corona journey?
What was your Corona? No, I mean, really, but that's what everyone needs to ask, because, you know, what did you learn in these 18 months about yourself? You had 18 months to learn something about yourself. And I want to know what you learned. Did you grow? Did you change? Did you move forward and progress spiritually in some way?
Right. Or did you read White Fragility, put it down, and then like keep on keeping on, and now you're like woke and you're, you know what I mean? Like
they didn't even read the book, honey. They bought it, read the frontispiece, sat down, had some rye whiskey, and smoked some weed. And you know, I have the book, so and you put it right in front. So when you come over to that house and have that little mid-century modern console with the woke records on the, you know, and you got all your Palo Santo and all your stuff.
Your little candle and your
candle, right? And the book is right there.
Collecting dust.
Collecting dust.
Yeah.
And see, that's what I look at. How many of your books is collected dust? Not did you buy it? Have you read it? Have you read it? Did you read that book? What'd you learn from that book? Tell me something. I want to know. This was a book, this Corona. Some people didn't read it. Some people did not read it.
Right.
You know, and you see people just running around maskless doing the same things they were doing before. In the same ways, but with a new desperation. And I'm sad for them, because it means that they did not use this time to in some way enrich and expand the possibilities of their spirit. They were just waiting to go back to what they were.
Right.
There are people and communities of people that are that instead of, you know, Corona was hard. It's one thing to, you know, be depressed and not be able to do whatever, but it's another thing to be one of those people who just completely dug their heels in and said, I will not move. I'm just going to go on, like, and have the privilege to do that too, to just opt out of doing coronavirus. Like, that's, I don't understand. I guess I don't understand why anyone want to do that. That's like living in a little fantasy world that they escaped to, and then now they're back, and like,
it's called the suburbs.
It is. Oh yeah, I was here in the suburbs. I was here for 8 months. Yeah, I know it.
It's called the suburbs. Oh, here comes Jason. Have we broke the internet yet? Oh my God! I'm done. Sleep in this corner.
No, Roger, I have to tell you something very honest. The last conversation that we had for our symposium, you were just like, here's a list and here's another list. You know which one you snuck the other one onto. And I think that's exactly what you were just talking about. Where you were just like, you know the ones that you just like decided to ignore during all of COVID? All right. It's our final Spotlight Foundation, and it's the Matthew Shepard Foundation. And I'm going to say a couple words. Everyone is so tired of my voice, I swear to God. A major part of the Matt's legacy is the number of artistic works inspired by his history, including the play The Larry Project and the epilogue The Larry Project 10 Years Later. Though our experiences traveling across the country support these products with resources, cultural context, and post-show discussions, we know the power of theater and its ability to change hearts and minds. This is the line that I get really blushy about because I hate saying it. We applaud the Playthings Theater and their commitment to bringing LGBTQ stories to life. We appreciate their partnership to foster a more caring and just world and invite you to learn more about the Matthew Shepard Foundation and our works to erase hate. We have about a 30-second long clip from Matthew Shepard, so let's do that now.
For more than 2 decades, Judy and Dennis Shepard have honored their son Matt by working to erase hate around the world. The Matthew Shepard Foundation honors his legacy by inspiring the good work of activists, teachers, artists, and legislators, and everyday LGBTQ+ folks and their allies. Join us today in helping to erase hate. Visit MatthewShepard.org.
Great. Playthings hopes you will look into all of our wonderful spotlighted foundations. Just to double check, I wasn't muted that whole entire time, right? Okay, great. And their works.
I'm
really,
sorry to interrupt you. I'm not quite sure the video played. Did the video play for everyone? Wonderful.
We just want to make sure that all of our spotlighted foundations that we're trying to sponsor right now to give kind of a spotlight to make sure that all of our patrons don't just recognize Playthings, but recognize the other organizations here in New York City that are fundamental and really important, that you don't just sponsor us, but you sponsor them as well. Yes, we are not for profit. We are looking for your donations. But in the same breath, we cannot exist without these other organizations existing. So support them in their tireless fight to make the LGBTQ+ community better and give them more rights. I'm now going to switch over to our thank yous. And before we leave you with this final song, I'd like to thank all of our panelists, Roger, Claire, and Kiernan. Sorry, it took me a second. And thank you all for being involved in this. I would like to thank our board, our Associate Artistic Director, Jessica Rica, who you just saw stop in for 5 seconds to make sure that that clip played. And all of you today who came in as patrons to watch this and learn and understand that me as the leader of Playthings, as this white, cis, gay man, has nothing really to say about this. I want to give my platform over to every panelist here, every person, and really want you to understand that, like, this is important. And anyone who kind of had a cringe moment or anything like that, get out of that space. Don't do that. Don't live in that space, because I come from this understanding of an umbrella where the spoke is the straight white old man, and every other spoke of this umbrella is all of our intersectionality. And that kind of means something to me because I cannot relate, but it is repeatable to every person in this conversation. So please just don't say that you're a white gay male or a white lesbian female and don't want to hear anything or everything else in intersexual like spectrum of this whole entire conversation. Don't shy away from this. So donate to Playthings. Our information will be on the bottom. We are happy for any donations so that we can safely return to live theater after all of COVID is done and hopefully in what is going to be the fall. The last moment that we have, I'd like to give everyone in this panel a second to just give some parting words to everyone before we go to our last moment of cobblestone streets of Manhattan. So go ahead and say whatever you'd like. Roger, you want to go first? You know it. Oh, you still muted. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm here.
Yep.
Hello. Final words. We have to demand love, but it starts from within us. And what we need to recognize is that the biases that we have been pummeling through this conversation are best and most effectively perpetuated when we internalize them. And so change has to start from within us. What are the things that we view as supreme? And are they naturally and organically what we actually value? Or were they imposed? And if we can always question that and keep honest about that, we will be free, and that freedom will spread.
Thank you. Carla?
I have to go after Roger. Wow. I think if there is one thing that I've learned from the past kind of year and some change is how powerful we are when we come together. And even in this space alone, you have 3 people who are like, have wonderful ideas, and having this conversation is important because it's the visibility that we're missing. So if we want to see the change in the places that won't even let us through the door, like, we have to unite, we have to intersect together in order to speak on behalf for those who don't have a voice. And I'm seeing that a lot now in regards to people volunteering for organizations, getting involved with smaller companies that are BIPOC focused and LGBTQIA+ focused, and getting those off the ground and speaking their minds and the truth in arenas that have typically excluded us. So use your voice if you have one, get in spaces like this, and yeah.
And finally, Kieran, my dear friend who covered very quickly in this symposium, and thank you so much for that.
No problem. I've been thinking a little bit about, why I got into theater, which is, because telling amazing stories, right? And then throughout the past 4 years of my education, and especially the last year and a half, I don't want to say I became disillusioned because that's not it. I mean, I still love theater. It's more so that more layers were added on top that really complicated my view of the industry and the theatrical world that I'm about to enter, right? And I have a lot of optimism that I'll be creating spaces that I feel safe in, that I can hopefully make other people feel safe in. But I really hope for the entirety of the theater community that is something that's able to happen. Because, I don't so much want to enter the spaces where I'm not welcome. So I won't, but that's sad because, I just want to do theater and I want to be with people. So that's that.
Thank you all so much one more time, from Playthings, from all of our patrons watching, from this whole entire company. You were all amazing. This is Billy Reese's Cobblestone Streets of Manhattan.
nights grow colder, the children scatter, the clouds brim over with rain. The boys grow older, the men grow fatter, but the cobblestone streets of Manhattan remain. The floors stretch taller, the smog grows thicker, the drunkards all start to slur. The rooms grow smaller, the strong grow sicker, but the cobblestone streets of Manhattan remain as they were when I was young and pretty, and still had dances left to dance. When I still trusted in the city and all it offered at a glance. But now the beds grow harder, the trees grow barer in every mile that you roam. And though the city shifts like the seasonal suns, the cobblestone streets of Manhattan will lead you back home. The ballroom floors are bare, the melodies hang in the air, each partner gone to bed, each ticket torn, every corner a reminder of days when life was kinder. They always could remind, but never warn, that the crowds grow meaner, the lines grow longer, the railroads all start to stall. The meat grows leaner, the stench grows stronger, but the cobblestone streets of Manhattan remain. Through it all, the constant waves of motion, the backward steps of wrong, each unenlightened notion, each undervalued song. Through the days when scraps thrown off the table were feasts prepared for royalty. Back then, when somehow you were able to be the man you hoped to be, but now your breaths are shorter, your hair is thinner, the eaves grow suddenly grim, but be it doe-eyed days where the dog is you dealt. The cobblestone streets of Manhattan will lead you to him.
Thank you so much for joining us for EqualiTEA by Playthings Theater. We hope you will be able to donate to us if you enjoyed this performance. If you've already donated, thank you so much. If you haven't, please find it at playthingstheater.org. Thank you so much. Happy Pride.